My name is Krell Vashari. I have hunted across 9 star systems. I have tracked beasts through acid swamps and frozen moons. I have mounted the heads of creatures that most species only see in nightmares. And I am telling you now, with every scar on my body as proof, that the most terrifying hunt of my life happened on a small blue world that the galaxy considers barely worth visiting. Earth, classification, level 2 biosphere. Dominant species, human. Threat assessment, minimal. I want you to remember that classification. I want you to hold it in your mind as I tell you what happened to me and my crew in the mountains of a region the humans call British Columbia, because by the end of this story, you will understand why I personally filed the paperwork to change that classification, and why the Galactic Hunting Guild accepted it without a single question. There were 6 of us, all Draveni, all veterans. We stood over 2 meters tall, covered in natural scale plating that could stop a low-caliber projectile. Our claws could tear through ship hull plating. Each of us carried a plasma lance capable of dropping a full-grown Karathi warbeast at 300 meters. We were not amateurs. We were the best hunters our world had ever produced. A wealthy collector had hired us for what he called an exotic safari. Earth was becoming fashionable among the elite. Its creatures were strange and varied, and the planet was so far from galactic attention that nobody cared what you took from it. Our employer wanted trophies, interesting ones, and he had heard rumors about the dominant species, humans. I had read the file on the shuttle ride down: soft skin with no protective layer, no claws worth mentioning, no venom glands, no natural armor, average height well below our own. Their only notable feature was endurance. They could apparently walk for very long distances without stopping. The file compared them to a grazing species that simply refused to lie down. I remember laughing at that. My second, Torek, said taking a human trophy would be like mounting a houseplant on your wall. Everyone in the shuttle laughed. We were still laughing when we landed in the mountains and began scanning for targets. It took us half a day to find her. She was alone. A single human female moving through the dense forest with nothing but a pack on her back and a wooden stick in her hand. Our scanners showed no settlements within 50 kilometers. No other humans, no vehicles. She was completely isolated. Torek looked at me and grinned. I gave the signal to surround her. We activated our cloaking fields and moved into position. 6 hunters, forming a perfect circle around one small creature who had no idea we were there. It should have been simple. It should have been boring. It should have been the easiest capture of my career. But then she stopped walking. She just stopped, right there in the middle of a clearing, and tilted her head to one side. She was listening. I watched her through my scope and saw her nostrils flare slightly. She was smelling the air. Our cloaking fields hid us from sight, but something had alerted her. Some sense I could not identify had told her that the forest around her had changed. I felt a small spark of respect, small, but real. Her instincts were sharper than the file suggested. Still, instincts would not save her. I gave the order, and we decloaked. 6 Draveni hunters appeared around her in a ring of scale and plasma. The clearing filled with the hum of our weapons charging. Any sensible creature would have dropped to the ground. Any rational being would have surrendered. The human woman set down her pack, planted her walking stick in the dirt, and looked at each of us one by one. She studied us. She actually studied us, her eyes moving from our legs to our arms to the joints in our armor. And then she spoke. "You sure about this?" Torek laughed so hard he nearly dropped his lance. 2 of the others joined in. I smiled behind my helmet. A creature with no fangs, no armor, and no weapons had just questioned whether we were certain. It was adorable. I ordered 2 hunters to restrain her. They stepped forward and grabbed her arms. And that is when she screamed. It was not the scream of a frightened creature. I have heard those 1,000 times, on 100 worlds. Prey screams have a specific quality. They are high, broken, desperate. This was none of those things. This was a long, structured sound that rolled out of her small body with a force that made my chest vibrate. It was deep, it was deliberate. It echoed off every rock face in the valley and bounced between the mountains like a living thing. It went on for nearly 10 seconds. Then it stopped. My hunters looked at each other. Then they started laughing again. "She is calling for help," Torek said, wiping a tear from his eye. "There is no one within 50 kilometers. We scanned the entire region. Perhaps she is singing, another hunter joked. A farewell song. I should have paid more attention to what happened next, but I was watching my hunters laugh and feeling satisfied with the easy capture. I almost missed it. The woman was not looking at us. She was looking at the tree line, and her expression was not one of fear, it was patience. Pure, calm, absolute patience. She was waiting for something. She turned to me. I do not know how she knew I was the leader, but she did. She looked directly into my visor and said 5 words that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. You should have gagged me. My bioscanner chirped. One contact, then another. Then it screamed with so many signals that the display blurred into a solid wall of red. They came from everywhere at once. The first one came through the tree line like a falling boulder. I had never seen a grizzly bear before that moment. The file had mentioned them. Large omnivores, solitary, potentially aggressive. What the file had not mentioned was the sheer, overwhelming physical reality of one charging directly at you. It was a wall of muscle and fur that weighed more than 2 of my hunters combined. Its roar shook the air in my lungs. Then a second one appeared from the opposite direction. Then a third, a female, and even through my helmet I could feel the particular fury that radiated from her. A mother. The most dangerous version of an already impossible creature. How? Torek shouted. They are solitary. They do not coordinate. But they were not coordinating. That was the part I only understood later. The bears were not working together. They were each responding independently to the same signal, the woman's scream. It was not random noise. It was a specific pattern of sound that she had learned over years of living in these mountains. The bears in this region associated human distress calls with one thing, a food opportunity. Where there is screaming, there is often a fallen animal. Where there is a fallen animal, there is a meal. She had not called for human backup. She had rung the dinner bell for every predator within earshot. And they were not alone. 7 wolves appeared on the ridge above us. I learned later that they had been following our hunting party for over an hour, curious about the unfamiliar scent of alien bodies moving through their territory. The woman's scream had simply told them that the strange-smelling creatures were now involved in a conflict, and where there is conflict, there are leftovers. My hunters opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the clearing. One beam struck the lead bear directly in the shoulder. The bear stumbled, shook its massive head, and kept coming. Our weapons were designed for creatures with centralized nervous systems and thin hides. These animals had layers of fat, dense muscle, and a skeletal structure that refused to stop functioning even when damaged. They were not tough because of armor. They were tough because they simply did not care about pain. In the chaos, the woman moved. I watched her drop low, twist free of the 2 hunters holding her, and roll across the ground with a speed and precision that no level 2 creature should possess. She grabbed a rock from the ground, stood up, and drove it into the back of one hunter's knee, directly into the gap between his scale plates. He went down screaming. She had found our weak point. In the few seconds we had stood around her before the capture, she had studied our bodies and identified the joints where our natural armor did not fully connect. She had learned our anatomy faster than some species learn it after years of study. 2 of my hunters were pulled down by the bears. I will not describe what happened. It was fast. Another was separated from the group and surrounded by the wolf pack. The wolves did not attack immediately. They circled. They waited. They watched for exhaustion. It was strategy without language, cooperation without command. The 3 of us who remained formed a tight defensive ring, weapons pointed outward. The bears had what they wanted and were no longer interested in us. The wolves maintained their distance, still watching. The forest slowly grew quiet again. And there she stood, the human woman, Maya. I learned her name later from a human database. Sergeant Maya Reeves, retired from something called Search and Rescue. She stood at the edge of the clearing, breathing hard, but standing straight, watching us with those steady, patient eyes. She was not injured. She was not afraid. She was waiting to see what we would do next. I looked at her, and I finally understood what the galaxy's databases had gotten wrong about humans. It was not about their bodies. Their bodies were average at best. It was not about their intelligence, though that was sharper than we had expected. It was about their connections. Humans do not survive alone. They never have. 10,000 years ago, they took wolves and turned them into loyal companions. They climbed onto the backs of horses and rode them across continents. They trained birds to hunt for them. They learned the patterns of every dangerous creature on their world, not to avoid them, but to live alongside them. They wove themselves into the fabric of their planet's entire system of life, not as rulers, but as participants. This woman had no claws, she had no armor, she had no venom. She had the entire food chain on speed dial. I gave the order to retreat. We collected our wounded and moved to the shuttle as fast as our legs could carry us. As we lifted off, I looked down through the viewport. Maya was standing in the clearing, surrounded by bears that were now calmly ignoring her, and wolves that circled at a respectful distance. She looked up at our shuttle, raised one hand, and waved. She waved goodbye, like we were neighbors who had stopped by for an unpleasant visit. That wave haunts me more than anything else. I filed my report to the guild that night. I reclassified humans from level 2 to level 7, a designation we call Apex Coordinator. The review board asked me to justify such a dramatic change. I told them everything. They accepted it unanimously. My report ended with one recommendation, and I made sure it was underlined so that no one could miss it. Do not hunt humans. Not because they are dangerous on their own, though they are more capable than we assumed. Hunt them because they are never truly alone. They have spent 10,000 years making allies of every creature on their world that has teeth. Every claw on that planet is a weapon they can borrow. Every predator is a friend they have not yet called. And if they ever reach the stars, and I believe they will do the same thing to every species they meet. They will make friends of us all, whether we want it or not. That was 6 months ago. I am sitting in a guild tavern now, drinking something strong enough to blur the memories. A young hunter, fresh and eager, noticed the scar on my arm, and asked me where I got it. I told him a human woman hit me with a rock. He laughed. They always laugh. I did not laugh back. He asked me what was so frightening about a creature that fights with rocks. I set down my glass and told him the truth. It was not the rock. It was not the bears or the wolves. It was the wave. She waved goodbye to us as we fled. She was not shaking. She was not crying. She was not traumatized. For her, being surrounded by 6 armed alien hunters was an inconvenience. A problem she solved before lunch. For her, it was an ordinary day. The young hunter stopped laughing. I picked up my glass and finished my drink. Then I said the words that I have been carrying since that day in the mountains, the words that I believe should be carved into the entrance of every hunting guild hall in the galaxy. We have spent centuries cataloging predators by fang and claw. We measured danger by the sharpness of teeth and the strength of jaws. Nobody, in all our centuries of hunting, thought to ask the only question that mattered. Nobody thought to ask which species could make the predators come when called.